They were convinced you'd stay buried beneath their design, unaware that the very storm meant to erase you was the one that summoned your emergence. Now, the illusions collapse, not with noise, but with undeniable clarity. Someone, once seen as untouchable, has been pulled from the shadows and into confinement. Their identity, a figure you once trusted. But their allegiance was never to your well-being. It was to control, to silence, to siphon your essence without question. Their entire scheme relied on your obedience to a role they assigned before you even understood the game. They bet everything on your permanent confusion, mistaking your silence for submission. But evolution does not ask for permission. It erupts. And the moment you remembered what was stolen, their structure began to dissolve. What's unfolding now is not vengeance, it's exposure. And with each layer revealed, the story shifts in your favor, dismantling every alliance built on keeping you from yourself. There are chains that dress themselves as legacy, patterns passed down not as gifts, but as burdens sealed into the name itself. What once moved silently through generations under the guise of inheritance has now been intercepted mid-transmission. Not by chance, not by luck, but by a force that no longer asks to be spared. The moment of rupture doesn't arrive with warning, it comes as a final refusal. What once latched onto your bloodline now loses grip entirely, stunned by the revelation that the energy it depended on no longer bows to it. The sabotage wasn't chaotic. It was calculated. Roles were assigned, names shuffled, memories distorted, all to ensure the engine of suppression kept running without interruption. But what they misjudged was the endurance of something ancient within you, something that remembers wholeness beyond the narrative of harm. Each forged document, each ritual of deceit, each engineered collapse, none could outlast the intelligence now guiding your every step. The collapse they assumed would break you becomes the signal that sets you loose. This isn't the story of one betrayer or a solitary villain. It's the dismantling of an entire structure masquerading as order. The veil lifts not to reveal a face, but a blueprint, coordinated hands moving in silence across systems meant to remain untouched. What has been uncovered goes far beyond coincidence or family dysfunction. It's a labyrinth of quiet transactions and unspoken contracts where those meant to protect were the first to sign you away. But the erasure ends here. The spell breaks, and in its place rises clarity too expansive to ever be buried again. What they called rescue was a transaction. What they described as care was a cover story. The truth, drenched in silence and sealed behind manufactured paperwork, is far from the narrative they used to keep the questions buried. This wasn't a guardianship. This was extraction. A forced detour designed to sever identity from origin, soul from lineage. And the legacy they scramble over now is soaked in betrayal, a legacy they only reached by eliminating the ones who stood in their way. But there's a force moving through the timelines, aligning every missing piece in such precise rhythm that even those behind the curtain begin to tremble. Attempts to forge a future by burying your past only work when no one is watching. But they fail to account for the eyes that see in ways no surveillance ever could. While they rehearse lies meant to convict you, documents they discarded carelessly resurface, carrying timelines, patterns, and proof that can't be dismissed. And the very person they enlist to discredit you returns instead with a truth too radiant to distort. You, surrounded by peace, aligned with purpose, while their accusations collapse under the weight of their own contradictions. That reversal of perspective becomes the axis that shifts everything. And none of this begins with a signature or a will. It begins with a crack in their structure, an unexpected discovery in a sealed archive, where a reference, long forgotten, points to a child whose placement never aligned with protocol. From that overlooked entry, a thread is pulled that reveals more than corruption. It exposes an ecosystem. One rooted in the strategic disappearance of those marked by spiritual clarity or ancestral wealth. Each name traced becomes another doorway into a system that counted on no one asking the right questions. Until now. There are households where silence feels heavier than walls, where glances replace answers, and every instinct to flee is treated like defiance. But in truth, it was never home. It was a constructed maze. Every moment of distance you feel isn't random disconnection. It's a manufactured state designed to disorient and destabilize. These people are not caretakers by love or law. They are appointed agents of confusion, adhering to a script meant to fracture your sense of origin. The misalignment you feel isn't dysfunction. It's intentional placement. The roots of your story begin with an erasure. The truth never vanishes. It gets rewritten. Those who were meant to raise you are no longer alive, not due to illness or accident, but because they stood in the way of a transaction. Their removal was staged with the precision of a covert operation. That one figure who always lingered in the background, part confidant, part observer, didn't just witness the family's unraveling, they orchestrated it. From forged narratives to relocated identities, every detail was curated to support your disappearance under the illusion of tragedy. There was no genuine concern when they spoke of your mental state, only paperwork built to imprison you without bars. Diagnoses were crafted like counterfeit currency, traded between professionals who never met you but claimed to know your mind. Their aim wasn't healing, it was control. A chain of signatures, testimonies, and incident reports, each one tightening the noose around your legal standing. And the whispered concern from those around you? They weren't confused. They were complicit, delivering lines rehearsed long before you ever questioned why none of this made sense. They miscalculate the resilience embedded deep within certain souls, the ones born with a memory not of facts, but of essence. When programming fails to take root, when conditioning breaks down, something ancient begins to stir. This isn't instinct. It's remembrance. No matter how far they scatter the pieces, the signal persists, subtle, magnetic, undeniable. And when that signal activates, it pulls reality apart at the seams. The illusion cannot hold, not when truth begins vibrating from within. What they designed to keep you lost becomes the very map that returns you to yourself. Among those involved, one figure cracks first, not from guilt, but fear. A person once woven into your everyday life, someone you never imagined as part of the machinery, begins speaking. Their motive is survival, not redemption, but their confession opens doors previously sealed. What unfolds is a chain reaction, locations unearthed, names exposed, entire records decoded. Systems once cloaked in sanctity are now laid bare. And beneath the surface of their rituals and titles lies something grotesque, an organized machine of exploitation dressed in robes and silence, now stripped of both. Behind locked accounts and digital shadows, your identity has been replicated, recycled to serve others within the same construct that trapped you. What appears as isolated fraud becomes a pattern. Children raised as ghosts, their names hijacked by people trained to mimic their existence just enough to deceive. Surveillance captures it all: transactions, signatures, movement across cities. A timeline of theft built on your reflection. And the story doesn't end with your awakening. Because this wasn't an isolated event. Files emerge. Photos. Logs. Patterns repeated across different states, different homes, different children. Not all live to tell their story. Some are silenced early, buried beneath diagnoses and restraints. But a handful break through. And when their voices join yours, the foundation beneath the entire structure begins to disintegrate. Not because it was fragile, but because it was built on stolen time. Some inheritances arrive like a letter in the mail, expected, tidy, and ceremonial. Others arrive like a verdict. What's being returned isn't just currency, it's the accumulated weight of every violation, every denial, every attempt to erase you. This isn't a payout. It's reclamation. What's on the table now is a rebalancing of scales that have been rigged against you since the beginning. It includes reparations that stretch across legal boundaries and spiritual dimensions, resources stolen, futures redirected, sanity tested. What's unfolding is beyond litigation. It's a correction written into the structure of reality itself. The one assigned to shadow you, disguised as an equal or twin flame, isn't suffering heartbreak. They're unraveling. Their mission was never love. It was surveillance dressed as attachment, manipulation in the form of concern. Every encounter, every coincidence, every carefully timed crisis was logged and weaponized. But the blueprint collapses when the subject stops responding to pain as expected. Their carefully choreographed chaos leaves behind more than destruction. It leaves evidence. Audio logs, footage, traces. The very tools used to monitor you are now time-stamped proof of their crimes, handed over not by force but by the arrogance of their own documentation. And while the machinery begins to implode, irony steps forward in full regalia. The orchestrator, once smug in distance, now runs, not from authorities, but from shadows they once commanded. In the world they helped create, awakening isn't just a risk, it's a breach of sacred code. They broke it, and in doing so, summoned a consequence their doctrine could not suppress. What they once weaponized, secrecy, disconnection, silence, is now turned inward. Because in the hierarchy of the unseen, nothing is more feared than a soul who was supposed to be contained, choosing to rise instead. There are documents signed in silence, contracts disguised as care, promises masked as protection. Hidden within them are clauses not meant to secure your life, but to quietly plan its ending. The blueprint doesn't call for chaos. It seeks subtlety. It demands patience. Every ambulance ride, every misdiagnosis, every wrong turn is a rehearsal cloaked in concern. They choreograph your exit like a performance, waiting for the moment the curtain drops and the paperwork folds neatly into payout. Their faith lies in the illusion that no one will question a perfectly timed tragedy. Buried beneath surface-level corruption is a far more deliberate machine. The newest revelation tears open the global seams of a scheme that stretches beyond borders. You aren't just misplaced, you're catalogued, assigned. Your presence in a foreign family isn't an accident. It's logistics. Children with heightened awareness, unusual perception, or ancient ancestry are rerouted into environments designed to dilute their essence. Their names rewritten. Their light dimmed just enough to delay rebellion. The gifted ones last the longest. Used more, drained more. But the end goal never shifts. Extinction after extraction. Pain was never random. It was engineered. Not simply to harm, but to convert energy. The anguish you endured didn't vanish into memory. It was collected, channeled, used. Not metaphorically. Literally. A frequency was stolen from you again and again, each time a piece of vitality pulled from your field. The system isn't just corrupt. It's predatory on a metaphysical level. Yet you persist, not by accident, but because something in you kept reading the code beneath the simulation. While the world begged you to forget, your very cells kept listening. And those who endure the dark long enough to decode it are never ordinary survivors. They're architects of collapse. There's a private rhythm only a few can hear, coded transmissions passed between those who've survived the machinery of erasure. Within these circles, language is sharper, more precise. It's not about belief. It's about knowing. In this space, strategies for spiritual endurance are shared like ancient blueprints. No manuals, no hierarchy, just raw clarity. And embedded within the consciousness of each awakened one is a trigger point. When it activates, interference collapses. No manipulation can override it. Once this internal firewall ignites, your presence becomes disruptive to systems built on secrecy. Your awareness is no longer private. It's a signal that shatters illusion in every direction. The ecosystem built to discredit you now turns on itself. That figure in a suit, once paid to manufacture your disappearance through paperwork, now faces prosecution. Every line they altered, every stamp they forged, reclassified as evidence. The practitioner who invented your condition without ever speaking to you now stands trial not for malpractice, but for collaboration in systemic disappearance. Their databases, once used to obscure the truth, now unlock the trail to other stolen lives. Their attempt to rewrite your identity becomes the blueprint for exposing hundreds more. And those who thought time could shield them now find the past catching up like wildfire. The ones who whispered concern while gathering your words like weapons now understand the trap they built was never one way. There is no expiration on complicity. Every voice note, every email, every time they rerouted your truth into a diagnosis, they are all part of a digital architecture now weaponized against them. This was never just about you. It was about how your refusal to disappear disrupted an entire framework designed to ensure no one ever made it this far. Some awakenings are subtle. Others rupture timelines. This one fractures centuries of silence. It isn't just your life cracking open. It's the release of ancestral tension held tight across bloodlines, borders, and buried memories. The weight of countless vanished children, erased families, and fragmented souls compiles into a ledger the universe refuses to ignore. The moment your consciousness breaks through, that ledger begins to close. Files reappear without being searched for. People begin speaking truths they swore they'd take to the grave. Systems of encryption dissolve in real time. It isn't coincidence. It's equilibrium correcting itself. What returns to you isn't simply wealth, it's a dimensional repair. Every withheld opportunity, every distorted relationship, every door that slammed shut without reason now opens in unison. The compensation reflects more than numbers. It mirrors soul years, energetic time stolen through sabotage. What's restored is layered: memory, ability, clarity. The version of you that was once buried beneath programming now steps forward untouched by interference. Your talents, once muted by fear or force, now echo louder. Each stolen thread is rewoven into something more resilient than it ever was. This isn't just recovery. It's ascension that burns bridges behind you. Those who once pulled your strings now fumble in panic, mistaking your radiance for danger, because to them, it is. Not because you intend harm, but because your sovereignty nullifies their authority. They scramble, not with apology, but with dread. Every device meant to monitor you scrambles. Every method of influence they once relied on misfires. You're no longer reachable by their tech, not because you've disappeared, but because you've risen beyond their frequency. Your presence now distorts their machinery. You are not just awake. You are untouchable. There's a reason this unveiling doesn't arrive sooner. It waits for the moment your inner foundation no longer fractures under weight. The unraveling begins only when your nervous system can witness without collapse, when your mind no longer internalizes betrayal as identity. What now comes to light isn't chaos, it's coordination. The moment your discernment matures into precision, truth arranges itself like constellations. Lineage realigns. Blood speaks. Origins, once hidden in riddles and paperwork, step forward with irrefutable clarity. Boundaries aren't reactions anymore, they're architecture. And the life that once felt like exile begins to mirror the life that was always yours. Every fabricated record they built around your existence begins to dissolve under scrutiny. The identity they wove was more than a disguise, it was an illusion engineered to outlast questioning. But now each falsified detail turns into a doorway. Places that never existed, signatures that shift under ultraviolet light, timestamps that contradict themselves. What once looked like bureaucracy now reads like confession. Their brilliance wasn't in hiding the truth. It was in assuming no one would ever search for it. But the search has begun, and it leads straight through the heart of the deception. This wasn't parenting. This was protocol. The figure assigned to raise you didn't love, they logged. You weren't nurtured, you were studied. Files were kept not for legal reasons, but to replicate your collapse. Only you didn't collapse. You defied every timeline they wrote for you. While other assignments followed predictable arcs, you deviated, adapted, awakened. That deviation became dangerous. Their curiosity turned clinical, then desperate. You became the anomaly they couldn't explain, and your endurance became evidence of a failure in their system. None of it was random. Each upheaval was scheduled. Every house fire, every car crash, every hospitalization was data. You weren't just watched, you were tested. Surveillance wasn't for safety, it was part of the equation. A long-form experiment run on the soul level, tracking the effects of isolation and grief on latent abilities. And now, every device used against you becomes a digital confession. The people behind it didn't just target children, they traced bloodlines, harvesting traits older than language. They didn't want orphans. They wanted keys. And they found one in you, but what they never prepared for was the key unlocking itself. Some bloodlines don't just carry traits, they carry codes. You were flagged not by accident, but through a system designed to hunt legacy. Not legacy as in wealth alone, but resonance, genetic echoes of ancient seers, empaths, and architects of healing. The operation functions like a shadow network with corporate logic. Territories divided, contracts awarded, objectives set. Children are ranked like assets. The ones with rare perception and dormant inheritance aren't discarded. They're studied, subdued, and prolonged. You were never meant to make it past the threshold. The moment your worth matured, you were marked for disappearance under the veil of coincidence. What they never accounted for is that some patterns break themselves. Their predictions, flawless on paper, fail in the face of what can't be quantified. They expected fragmentation, collapse, regression. They didn't calculate for transmutation. You weren't trapped, you were observing. While they banked on you folding under pressure, you were reconfiguring. There is no algorithm for the chosen. The more they pushed you toward helplessness, the faster you remembered the part of yourself that can't be owned. Their error wasn't procedural, it was spiritual. They mistook trauma for defeat, not knowing that pain can become propulsion. Every layer of your life was constructed like a stage set, walls wired with microphones, rooms baited with agents dressed as friends. Records falsified, appointments rerouted, conversations documented. But what they failed to realize is that their obsession with tracking every inch of your journey created a paper trail not of your instability, but of their obsession. Their network of watchers unintentionally recorded a transformation. The very system meant to erase you now serves as proof of premeditated harm. And not just harm, but psychological warfare. A campaign that, once exposed, reclassifies everything they've done as a matter of national and cosmic consequence. There are institutions draped in virtue, masking mechanisms of disappearance. Under banners of salvation, a covert exchange unfolds, trust traded for silence, children marked and reassigned. These organizations don't preach, they profile. Their sermons are codes, their rituals entry points to hidden transactions. The network spans continents, operating like a corporation with spiritual branding. You were never an outlier. You were a target selected by pattern recognition. And the few who survive their algorithms carry the very frequencies that now dissolve their entire infrastructure. What's been stolen isn't just freedom, it's turned into currency. Lives translated into assets, energy rerouted into systems that feed on silence. But greed leaves fingerprints. The structure built around your inheritance, delayed access, guarded transfers, falsified intent, now acts as a map. Every ledger, every clause, every digital breadcrumb reveals motive and method. In seeking to profit from your delay, they expose their timing. In trying to control your exit, they document their crime. And your survival. That was never part of the plan, which makes your presence the one anomaly that overturns the system. Emotional sabotage was engineered, not spontaneous. The person planted to bind you emotionally doesn't mirror your soul, they mimic your wounds. Their closeness is performance, rehearsed and incentivized. Every moment of collapse was timed to fracture your development. The chaos was business. The obsession, commissioned. You weren't loved, you were studied. You weren't held, you were tethered. And still, the bond broke, because you stopped confusing attention with care. The disruption you caused isn't metaphorical, it's ritual interference. The tether around your bloodline was no coincidence. It was designed and maintained with intention. An energetic lock installed over generations, recalibrated each time someone got too close to remembering. But memory is alive. And when it returns, the chain snaps. Your awakening becomes a rupture in the fabric they've been weaving for decades, freeing not just you, but those bound to your same code. And the abundance that returns to you? It arrives sanctified, restored through purification, not vengeance. The entire scheme crumbles not because they ran out of time, but because you stopped giving them your energy. Their system depends on participation, and you withdrew consent. Your clarity made their shadows visible. Your refusal made their rituals collapse. Their end wasn't forced. It was inevitable. Because you're not here to repeat the cycle. You're here to rewrite the script. This time, your lineage writes from remembrance. And the story you begin now is authored in a language only the awakened can read.